Okay, good morning all. We will start with, I think, field strength at a distance. We stopped there only. In the last class, we stopped there only. We are discussing about space wave propagation. Okay, so we will start from the derivation of field strength of a space wave at a distance. Okay, so I'll share the screen. Field strength at a distance. Is it visible? Yes. Okay, so yeah, we will just move to the PPT. Field strength at a distance. Okay, here we are considering space wave propagation. Okay, as you already know, the space wave propagation will be having two kinds of waves. Okay, one will be the direct one. Okay, the direct one from transmitter to receiver. It travels on a straight path or a direct path. Okay, the second one will be indirect wave. Or normally we are considering indirect wave as the wave reflected from the ground. Okay, so this is the wave. D2. Okay, here D1 is the direct wave and D2 is the indirect wave, or D2 is the wave which travels indirectly. Okay, it reaches the receiver after a reflection from Earth. So we want to consider the field strength at a distance, or at a distance means the field strength at the receiver. The field strength at the receiver we want to derive. Okay, that's our aim. So the field strength at the receiver will be the resultant of these two waves. Okay, one direct wave and one indirect wave. These two waves will reach the receiver. There, the resultant of these two waves will give the field strength. Okay, then how we will calculate the resultant of two waves? Since both these waves are traveling in different paths. Okay, both these waves are traveling in different paths. So they will be having, of course, they will be having a path difference. Got it? Since both these waves are traveling through different paths, okay, D1 and D2, there will be a path difference between these two waves. And wherever there is a path difference, there will be a phase difference. Okay, so while calculating the resultant, we have to calculate the path difference and phase difference between these two waves. Okay, then we can calculate the resultant of these two waves at the receiver. So in order to do that, we have to calculate D1 and D2. Then D2 minus D1 will give us the path difference. Okay. Then from path difference, we can calculate the phase difference provided we know the frequency. That we have done in the third module. Okay. In array of 2-point sources, there we already done that. That derivation in class itself we have completed. Here you see HT. HT is the height of the transmitter and HR is the height of the receiver. Okay. Here both are different. Transmitter and receiver heights are different. It's a general case. Okay. So here this M dash T dash. What is M dash T dash? It will be HT minus HR. Okay. M dash T dash will be HT minus HR, or height of transmitter minus height of receiver. Okay. Then what will be this B T dash? B T dash. Here this is HR. That much is we have taken towards downwards. Okay. So this TB or RA both are same only. RA and this TB both are same only. So it will be nothing but HR. Okay. So B T dash will be HR plus HT. And one more thing is that here we have taken the curvature of Earth as 0, or you have considered flat Earth. Okay. Then only this will work. Here the Earth is shown as flat only. So here our basic idea is to find out what is D1 and what is D2. Consider the triangle M dash T dash R dash. m dash t dash r dash. From there we can calculate d1. Okay, d1 will be m dash t dash whole square plus m dash r dash. Or what is m dash r dash? That is nothing but the distance between transmitter and receiver, or d. So we can calculate d1 based on Pythagoras theorem. Okay, m dash t dash the whole square plus m dash r dash, or d square. So d1 we got already. Now how to find out d2? For that only we have extended this to downwards. This RA portion is for that only. Okay, this RA portion, you can say that, you can see that this both these are same only, R dash and R dash. R dash and RA both are same length only, HR. And here it is right angle only. Okay, here also it is right angle only. So that means this OR dash will be same as OA. Or in other words, D2, that is the distance from T dash O R dash, will be same as T dash O A. Okay. So if we are able to calculate T dash A, the distance T dash A, that will be D2. Since both the triangles are, both these two triangles, O R dash R and R O A, both are similar triangles. So O R dash will be equal to O A. So D2 will be equal to the distance T dash to A. So how we will calculate T dash to A? Consider this triangle B T dash A. B T dash A. T dash A is the hypotenuse of the triangle B T dash A. So we can calculate T dash A, or D2 will be the square of T dash B and BA. BA is nothing but D. Okay. So what will be T dash B? T dash B is HT plus HR. So based on these two ideas, we are going to calculate D1 and D2. Okay. See, let HT and HR is the height of transmitting and receiving antennas, and D is the distance between them. Then that we have already told, m dash t dash. M dash t dash is nothing but HT minus HR, and B T dash. B T dash is HT plus HR. Okay. Consider the triangle R dash M dash T dash that I have told initially. R dash M dash T dash. We are considering R dash M dash T dash to find out D1. D1 square will be equal to HT minus HR the whole square plus D square. So D1 will be the root of that. HT minus HR the whole square plus D square all root, or root of HT minus HR whole square plus D square will be D1. Now we are going to do a simple manipulation of this equation, taking D outside, or taking D square outside. Taking D square outside will leave the equation as D1 is equal to D into 1 plus HT minus HR by D whole square all root, or D1 is equal to D into root of 1 plus HT minus HR by D. And there is a standard result for this type of equations by polynomial expansion. We can represent this, since this HT minus HR will be a very small amount compared to D. Okay, D is the distance. HT and HR both are height of antennas, so their difference will be a small amount. It will be in meters, few meters, but D will be kilometers, hundreds of kilometers it will come. So this HT minus HR by D, that will be a small amount. Okay, or HT minus HR will be very small compared to D. So in such cases, based on polynomial expansion, we can reduce these kind of equations. 1 plus x square all raised to 1 by 2, those kind of equations, we can reduce it into 1 by 2. Or that power the power 1 by 2 we can directly take into this portion. Okay, that is a standard result. So this can be written as this will be almost equal to d into 1 plus 1 by 2 ht minus hr by d the whole square. Okay, so this 1 by 2 can be taken to here. That's the standard result. It will be almost equal. So d1 is nothing but d1 is equal to d plus 1 by 2d into ht minus hr the whole square. Okay, so we have found out d1. Similarly, in order to find out d2, which triangle we should consider? We should consider the triangle b t dash a. Same procedure. Consider the triangle b t dash a. So similarly, considering the triangle b t dash a or triangle a b t dash, any order we can say the name. Okay, d2 square is equal to d square plus ht plus hr whole square. Only difference here is ht plus hr. There it was ht minus hr. Following the same procedure, we will get d2 as d plus 1 by 2d into ht plus hr the whole square. Only difference is the ht plus hr here, and in place of d1 it was hd minus hr. That is the only difference. All the steps are same only. So we have found out d2 and d1. Now we wanted to find out the path difference. That was our aim. Okay, we have found out the length of two different paths. Now we want to find out the path difference. Okay, so path difference will be nothing but the difference between the two paths, d2 minus d1. d2 minus d1, just we are calculating d2 minus d1. That ht plus hr the whole square we have to expand, and ht minus hr whole square also we want to expand. So all things will be cancelled except in ht plus hr the whole square, a term will come a plus b whole square, a term will come 2ht hr. Okay, that will be positive here. Since it is ht plus hr, its expansion will give a term 2ht hr. That is positive here. And here, since it is ht minus hr, this expansion will give a term minus 2ht hr. Okay, that term is negative here. That negative multiplied with this negative, that will become positive. Okay, so those two terms will add together and all other terms will get cancelled. So our path difference we will get as 2ht hr by d. Okay, 2ht hr divided by d. So since we know the path difference, we can calculate the phase difference equals 2 pi by lambda into path difference. So phase difference we have calculated 2 pi by lambda. Just multiply 2 pi by lambda into the path difference. We will get the phase difference. So it is nothing but 4 pi ht hr by lambda d. Okay, it's almost we are going to finalize our derivation. So we know the phase difference, and we want to calculate the total phase difference. Okay, total phase difference theta is alpha plus beta. Alpha we have already calculated, that is the phase difference due to the path difference of the two waves. And what is beta? Beta is the phase difference due to reflection. Okay, since one wave is getting reflected, for a perfect reflection, the phase difference is 180 degree. Okay, that you already know. We are studying it in the lower classes. For a perfect reflection, the phase difference will be 180 degree. Okay, so the total phase difference will be the sum of these two quantities. That means the sum of phase difference due to path difference and phase difference due to reflection. Okay, so the resultant field, that only we are going to calculate the resultant field. Okay, the resultant field at receiver or point r is given by er is equal to E0 2 cos theta by 2. Does anybody remember a similar equation? A similar equation, anybody remembering? Did we study it anywhere, like in our second and third modules, anywhere? Nobody is remembering. We have studied a similar equation. Resultant field. Field at a distance due to two sources. Okay, anyway, I will tell that is field strength due to two point sources. Beta d cos theta by 2, that was the expression there. Okay. Here, it is also a similar equation only. Everything is same. Just we are concerned about the different path. Okay. So, the resultant field, similarly, the resultant field E naught 2 cos theta by 2. And if anybody is remembering the derivation of field due to 2 point sources, an array of 2 point sources, they will definitely remember a similar equation there. They have derived a similar equation there. Okay, here also that idea is same only. So here theta will be alpha plus beta. When Earth is perfect, or for a perfect reflection, beta is equal to 180 degree. So we can write cos theta by 2 as cos alpha plus beta by 2, or cos alpha plus 180 by 2, which can again be written as cos 90 plus alpha by 2. So cos 90 plus theta, that is sin theta. So it will reduce to sin alpha by 2. So just substitute that in the equation of resultant field. The resultant field will be 2 E naught sin alpha by 2. Alpha, we have already calculated the value for alpha. That just substituting that alpha here, you will get 2 E naught sin 4 pi ht hr divided by 2 lambda d. And again, we are taking one assumption here. We are assuming that the theta is small. It is not assumption, that is reality only. Because d will be larger and lambda will also be larger compared to ht and hr. So, the value inside that sign will be very small only. So, for small values of theta, we can take sin theta almost equal to theta. So that assumption we are taking, and we are writing resultant field ER is equal to E naught. Just discard the sign. 4 pi HTHR divided by lambda D. Okay. So that's how the expression for resultant field or field strength at a distance. We will move on to the next slide. And if EF is the field strength at unit distance from antenna, we are just changing or rearranging it, this equation based on expression for power. Okay. EF is the field strength at unit distance from antenna. So E naught can be written as EF divided by D. And EF in terms of power, we can represent as 7 root P. Just substitute this 7 root P by D in place of E naught in the previous equation. Okay. E naught, substitute E naught with what? E naught is given as EF by D, where EF is a field strength at unit distance, and EF is given by 7 root P, where P is the effective power radiated. Just we want to rearrange this equation based on effective power. This is mainly for problem solving and all. Okay, if the effective power is given, we can calculate the resultant field. So based on that, we can represent ER 7 root P by D into 4 pi HTHR by lambda D. So that just all constant values we can put and can calculate. Pi value of pi we can put, and 4 into 7. It will give 88. Okay, 88 root P HTHR by lambda D square. So this equation or this derivation is important. Okay, only few derivations are here in this module, out of which this one is particularly important. So basic idea was just calculate the path difference occurring due to direct and indirect waves. Okay, direct wave and indirect wave, you just calculate the path difference and just calculate the phase difference. Okay, the phase difference occurring due to the path difference, just calculate that. Then add for reflection, phase difference for reflection, you can just add 90 degree, that phase difference will come. Then just substitute in the general equation. ER will be equal to E naught 2 cos theta by 2. Theta will be equal to alpha plus beta by 2. Just do the calculation and just take one assumption. For small value of theta, sine theta will be equal to theta. That's it. Our derivation is complete. Okay. So now we are moving to our next topic, that is duct propagation or super refraction. Okay, this is an interesting topic. Duct propagation or super refraction. So, like in troposphere, we have already seen that the temperature falls at the rate of 6.5 degree per kilometer. That means temperature is keep on decreasing in troposphere. So, inside the troposphere, the atmosphere has a dielectric constant slightly greater than unity at Earth's surface, where the density is most. All these things we have seen already. So, inside the troposphere, the dielectric constant of atmosphere will be greater than unity at the surface of Earth, since the air is most dense near to surface of Earth. So this decreases the unity at greater heights. That is also understandable. Okay, as we are moving on to greater heights, air density become less, and dielectric constant it keep on reducing, and it will reduce the unity, and at greater and greater heights, it can even approach zero based on the air density. So this is called as a standard atmosphere. Standard atmosphere is one where the dielectric constant is assumed to decrease uniformly with height to a value of unity to it can reduce up to zero. So this is a standard atmosphere, or this is an ideal atmosphere. But there can be some changes. Okay. Since the air is frequently turbulent and other times there are often layers of air, one above the other, having different temperatures and water vapor contents. That is the idea here. The air is turbulent. That means the air is always in motion. It is not like that always this air is constant and the one layer should lie above the other layer. It is not like that always. Okay. So in some cases, these things can change. And in some cases, even the inversion of temperature can happen. That means we are expecting 6.5 degree reduction per kilometer in troposphere if we are moving upwards. That means if we are moving 1 kilometer upwards, the temperature should reduce by 6.5 degree. But sometimes, due to these things, due to turbulence of air and due to other atmospheric activities, sometimes if we are moving upwards in the troposphere, we can see an increase in the temperature. Okay. So these conditions gives rise to a new phenomenon called super refraction or duct propagation. So this will happen in troposphere only. So for that, the inversion should occur. That means, in contrary to the normal expectation, we should have a layer which is having comparatively hot temperature. Okay. In lower part, the temperature will be hot, and we are expecting the temperature should reduce while we are moving upwards. It was reducing, but after some time, again temperature is increasing. That means here a hot region is there on the downside. In between, a colder region is there, and above that, again a hotter region is there. So we can say that a cold region is sandwiched between two hot regions. This is called as a duct. Or in other words, this can act as a duct to propagate. Duct means okay. So duct, it can act as a duct, or it can act as a waveguide. The electromagnetic waves will get trapped in this layer. Okay, and it can travel throughout the curvature of Earth, and it happens in troposphere only. So two boundary surfaces between layers of air form a duct which guides electromagnetic wave between its walls. So its walls means one hotter region, then one colder region, then one hotter region, or one colder region gets sandwiched between two hotter regions. So that colder region in the middle will act as a duct. That only is written in telecommunication. And atmospheric depth is a horizontal layer in the lower atmosphere in which the vertical refractive index gradients are such that radio signals are guided or ducted tend to follow the curvature of Earth. Okay, so that is only shown here. When the frequency is sufficiently large, the region where the variation of dielectric constant or refractive index is usually high traps the energy and causes it to travel along the Earth's surface. Okay, here the one atmospheric depth is shown, and top of atmospheric depth, that will be a hotter region, and ground surface, that will be a hotter region, and in between one colder region is coming. So that will act as an atmospheric depth, and super refraction occurs there. So refractive index is high in that particular, since that is a colder region, that will be a denser region. So their refractive index will be high, and the wave which is trying to escape from that colder region to outside. Outside means that will be a hotter region. Above that, there will be a hotter region. But in hotter region, since that is a rarer region, the refractive index will be less. So what will happen? The wave will come back to denser medium itself. So this will continue. So as a result, the wave will get trapped in the colder region. Okay. So it will result in propagation of the wave. The wave will be trapped. That is only shown in this picture. Okay, top of atmospheric duct and the trapped wave. Okay. So the main requirement for the formation of duct is temperature inversion, that I already told. The temperature inversion should be there. A thermal temperature inversion is an atmospheric condition where warmer air exists in a well-defined layer above a layer or significantly cooler air. This temperature inversion is opposite of what is normally the case. The air is usually warmer close to the surface and cooler higher up. That only we are expecting. The air should get cooler as we are moving upwards. But the temperature inversion is opposite of that. That I already explained. Okay. So a similar thing you might have seen or you might have heard about mirage, Marija. Okay. That thing also is occurring due to phenomenon like this. That just pictorial representation is there. See, this is the pictorial representation. Here, hot air is there, and cold air is forming the duct. Okay, so cold air is throughout this region. This cold air. Okay, so this light rays cannot go to hot air. Okay, because that is having a lower refractive index. So light rays will get trapped in the duct, or in the band of cold air, light rays will be trapped. So we will move to this pic. If a person is standing here, he will be getting light rays propagating through this duct or this colder air. He will be getting, he is standing here, he will be getting light rays into his eyes, which is coming from this side. Okay, this side it will be C, but he will feel like that rays are coming from here, because we are always expecting light to travel in straight line. Okay, so if a person who is looking to sky in this region, he will be getting the waves or light rays from this duct only. So that is correspond to this region. Okay, that means the objects from ground only or objects from the water only he is seeing, but he will feel that are coming from the sky. Okay, so that is an example shown here. Sometimes people have like sites like this. They used to see a ship is coming through the sky. That is happening actually due to this ducting phenomenon. Okay, and in deserts also they are seeing these things. Like they will see a pond or a pool of water in the sky. That is also happening due to this ducting phenomena. Okay, this normally in sailors are all those persons are observing these kind of things. It was regarded as some sort of witchcraft or some sort of black magic in olden days, but now we know how these things are happening. Okay. So just some mathematical equations of the phenomena. Since the refractive conditions are sufficiently different from the standard condition, the modified refractive index is given by the refractive index. It is different from the standard condition, because standard condition, it is supposed to decrease as we move upwards, but here it is not like that. So we are introducing a type modified refractive index. So n, our normal refractive index m is equal to mu plus h by r. It cannot be equal to mu plus h by r. H is the height of the duct and r is the radius of earth. Okay. So the excess modified index of refractive modulus. That refractive index, we are again just rearranging that into a new term called refractive modulus. That is denoted as m. M is nothing but n minus 1 into 10 raised to 6. Just that thing. You just understand this thing only. The normal refractive index is updated to mu plus h by r. And that is n. N minus 1 into 10 raised to 6 we are taking as modified index of refractive modulus. Okay. Further discussion is beyond scope of our syllabus. Okay. So why we are calculating this is we have to find out the gradient of m. Okay. That will give us an idea about this ducting phenomenon. The value of gradient or d by dh of n or variation of m or variation of refractive index modulus m with respect to height and its sign both depends on tropospheric conditions. Duct is formed only when the value of gradient is negative. That means m should decrease with h. That is only our basic idea. If the refractive modulus is decreasing with respect to height, we can say that there can be a ducting phenomena. Okay. If the refractive modulus of m or mu minus 1 plus h by r into 10 raised to 6, if that quantity is reducing with respect to height h, then we can say that the ducting phenomenon can occur or ducting phenomenon is there. There are two types of ducts, surface duct and elevated duct. That, as the name suggests, you can understand what is surface duct and what is elevated duct. Surface duct means one portion will be earth, and one above earth, colder air will be there, and above that, hotter air will be there. Okay, so that is a surface duct. Then next one comes the elevated duct. What will be the elevated duct? In elevated duct, these two portions will be air only. Lower one air portion will be there, hotter air will be there. In between, colder region or our duct will be there, and above that again hotter region will be there. So that is elevated duct and surface duct. Okay. And our surface duct is formed near to ground, and elevated duct trapped waves are oscillating between two walls in the atmosphere. Okay, so below and above atmosphere or air will be there. In between, the duct will be formed. That is elevated duct. So here, ground duct and elevated duct are shown. So you can see what is shown here in this picture. In x-axis, m or refractive modulus is shown, and in y-axis, h or height is shown. For a standard atmosphere, the refractive index m or refractive modulus m, it will increase constantly with respect to height. Okay, m will constantly increase with respect to height. So next is shown ground-based duct or surface duct. See what is the difference there? There the m is decreasing up to a particular height. M is decreasing. What if the m is decreasing or refractive modulus m is decreasing? Means there can be a duct. Okay, or the medium is getting denser and denser, or the temperature is not falling as we are expecting. Then after that, what will happen? M, it goes on increasing. Okay, so after the point D, in the second picture, after the point D, the medium is getting hotter. Okay, from A1 to D, the medium is colder. So a duct is formed there. Okay, so this is a surface duct. How we can say this as a surface duct? Because from surface itself, M is decreasing. So this is a surface duct. Then next, elevated duct. Initially, M was increasing only. Okay, and the slope was positive only. So then what happened? It keeps on increasing up to a point C. Then it keep on decreasing. Then again it keep on increasing. What does that mean? What is the meaning of this? That means between points B2 and D2, the medium is denser, or this is a cold region. And above that, normally we are expecting a colder region, but this region is a hot region. So it is called as inversion layer. So here also, here it was a hotter region since M was continuously increasing. Here it was a hotter region. Again it is increasing, but after a point C2, it starts to decrease. So at which point it again starts to increase. Those 2 points, that point if you are projecting downwards, we will get another point here. So from this point and this point, or between D2 and B2, a duct will be formed. Or we can say that this region is sandwiched between 2 atmospheric layers of hotter region. Okay, so that's why we can call this duct as an elevated duct. Okay, so that's all about our duct propagation. Now we will move on to tropospheric scatter propagation. Okay. This is an interesting mode of propagation. And here UHF and microwave signals are found to be propagated much beyond the line of sight through forward scattering in the troposphere regularities. That means it is nothing but in troposphere, some air particles and some dust particles, all those things will be there. And some some sort of water vapor will be present. Okay. So these things can scatter the waves. These things or these particles can scatter the wave which we are propagating. So tropospheric scatter propagation is making use of that phenomenon, and it ranges from 200 megahertz to 10,000 megahertz. There are 2 different theories involved in forward scatter propagation. Scattering of radio waves from lower E layer of ionosphere. That we are not discussing here. We are discussing about tropospheric scatter propagation. The scattering should be happening troposphere. Second one is scattering from fine layers of troposphere. That only we are discussing here. So the basic idea is this one only. What is the idea? There are some sort of particles will be there in the layers of troposphere. Those can scatter the waves. And if we are able to catch those scattered waves, then we can communicate, or communication is possible. So that is the basic idea behind tropospheric scatter propagation. So this is the pictorial representation of that. Okay, tropospheric station number 1 and tropospheric station number 2. Both the antennas should be highly oriented, such that they should have a common volume. Okay, or their beams should have a common volume. Then only this is possible. Both the antennas should be directed in such a way. Okay, suppose if I am transmitting a wave from tropospheric station number 1 to atmosphere, it will reach here, and from here, if it is scattered by the particles of troposphere, it will reach here only. Okay, because two antennas are oriented in such an angle. So if I am transmitting to here, and from that common volume, if the wave is getting reflected, definitely it will come here, and vice versa. If I am transmitting from here, and if the waves are reaching here and then it is getting reflected, it will come here only. So here one or two disadvantages are there. Like here, antenna orientations are very important. Both the antennas should be oriented perfectly. Then only it can receive accurately. And the second one, tropospheric scattering means the scattering from dust particles and scattering from this water vapor, etc. So that amount of scattering will be very less. Okay, that amount of scattering will be very less. So the power requirements are high. Okay, so these two are the main disadvantage. But it is a very reliable form of communication because no one can intercept in between. It is not based exclusively on frequencies. Okay. If somebody even know the frequency also, they won't be able to interfere in between because their antenna orientation should also be perfectly matched. Then only the communication is possible. So if we are establishing a communication link through this tropospheric scattering, it is very difficult to interfere into that, or it is very difficult to extract data from this by an outside agency. So it is used by military forces and all. It is very secure. Okay. So what is the idea? Station 1 is transmitting and waves are reaching here. From there, this tropospheric particles will be there, like dust particles and water vapor will be there. From that, it is getting reflected, and since the orientation of antennas are perfectly matched, it will reach here only. Here, that is station 2 will capture that, and vice versa. Two-way communication is possible through this. Okay. So here the distance covered will be a few hundred kilometers and height less than 8 kilometers normally. So that's why it is called as tropospheric scatter propagation. It is happening only in troposphere. Tropospheric scatter is fairly secure method of propagation as high alignment is as dish alignment is critical. Dish means antenna alignment is critical, making it extremely difficult to intercept the signals. Okay. So our country India is having a troposcatter link with Russia, and it is from Srinagar to Dushan. Dushan is a city in old USSR, Russia. It is around 655 kilometer long. Okay. So why both these countries relying on troposcatter link? Because it is difficult to intercept. It is secure than other mode of communications. Okay. So this is a stamp published by Postal Department in 1982 when this link was established. It is showing the troposcatter communication link, India and USSR, old USSR. At that time, Russia was USSR only. Okay. So it is shown our Red Fort, and this is Moscow. Okay, and the link is also shown there. So at that time, India was having many. India was having too many dealings with USSR, especially in the defense sector. Okay. So this is currently this is used by. This is an image of tropospheric scatter propagation antennas used by US military troops. So here you can see the antenna orientation is very, very critical. Okay. So now we will move on to very high frequency and ultra high frequency mobile radio communication systems. So this is not like our normal this one, mobile. Okay, this is not like our normal mobile communication. This is very high frequency and ultra high frequency mobile communication. What is the difference between our normal communication and this? Because here we are using frequency only is the main difference. Okay, here we are using VHF and UHF. So this you might have seen in police and all are using this. Okay, normally police people and all are using this. They will be having a handset in their hand and they will be communicating through that. That is only very high frequency and ultra high frequency mobile radio communication. So it is mainly used to communicate between a fixed base station and many mobile stations situated in vehicles, ships, and aircrafts. You might have also seen this handset used by air traffic controllers while landing of aeroplane, and while ship also they will use, because the ship will be very large. From one side to another side, it is not possible to hear. So they will use this type of communication sets. Okay, that is only very high frequency and ultra high frequency mobile radio communication system. Okay. So its frequency range ranges from 30 to 470 megahertz, and we know the range is limited by the line of sight. This range is very limited. Within a particular district or within the ship or within the airport only it can communicate. A restricted number of channel assignments are available within the bands. I think this thing portions may not be there in the note I have given, so it's better to take a note of this. Okay, otherwise it will be difficult for you during the exams. It is only there in one or two texts, so it will be difficult for you. So a restricted number of channel assignments are available within the bands 148 to 174 megahertz and 450 to 470 megahertz. So some particular number of channels are available. Through that channel only they are communicating. Those channels are mainly located between 148 and 174 megahertz and 450 to 470 megahertz. Okay. Here the type of antennas used. The type of antennas used are vehicle mounted short down with antennas. That you might have seen in defense sector and all. Like if you have visited any defense area, there will be a vehicle parked in front of that particular area, and it will be mounted with a small antenna or a small dish antenna in that. And you can even see the security persons are using this handset to communicate in between. So the entire station is under that surveillance. That antenna only this short vehicle mounted short ground whip antenna. Okay. So we are going to that basic block diagram of that. The transmitter and receiver are designed to operate at same frequency, but one-time transmission or reception only. That also you might have heard. You might have seen police people and this fire service people are all they are all using this. They can just speak once and they have to wait for the command to receive. Okay, it's not like our normal mobile communication. First, they have to speak and their message to reach there, and then from that sender, next message should come. They have to wait for that. Only transmission or reception is possible at a particular time. Okay. So the example, aircraft and ship control, police and fire services are the examples. So here you can see the diagrammatic representation of that. One base station will be there, and from base station using a particular frequency F1, mobile stations are controlled. Okay, one operator console will be there. That can be controlled from anywhere. From operator console to base station, wired lines are used. Okay, that means in defense sector and all people are using leased telephone lines. They can take use of the telephone lines and they can transmit whatever information they want to pass. They can transmit. And from base station only this mobile communication is started. Okay, suppose if somebody is some military headquarters is getting an information like all air force stations are going to be attacked, or there is a chance of getting any sort of terrorist attack in the defense sectors or defense establishments, then that is only the operator console. So from the operator console in the defense headquarters, through wire or through telephone line, they will send some code message to all base stations. That code message will be some particular code that if somebody else is also hearing that, they won't be understanding what is that. That only the defense people only will get to understand that. So once that reaches the base station, from base station, it will be transmitted to all mobile stations. Then only the mobile transmission is happening. Till then, it is wired only. So from base station to mobile station, wireless transmission is happening. Okay, they will transmit to all handsets that high alert, some attack is going to happen. So everyone is on high alert, like that. They will pass the message. Okay, that is the basic idea of this. So base station and remote control console is connected by long cable or leased telephone lines that I already told, depending upon the distance. For large area coverage, additional base stations are also used. Suppose the area is very large, we can use multiple base stations. So different frequencies are used to communicate between repeater stations. So that I will show you the picture. See, this is an example of that. Like here, one base station is there, operator console is there. From that, from the local base station, it is transmitted. Okay, and there is one more repeater station is shown, repeater link 2. That means from operator console, it is going to local base station 1, and the local base station will be handling so many handsets. And outside the area of local base station, one more base station they want to establish. So for that, they are using repeaters. So there also they will set up one base station, but that base station will operate subject to the signals coming from first repeater link. The first repeater link is connected to local base station. Okay, from here, local base station is transmitting and it is handling handsets here. At the same time, it will transmit to repeater link in station 2, and here they will use a different frequency. It is using, for transmission, it is using a frequency F1, so that its handsets can capture frequency F1 only. But in between repeater stations, they will use different frequency in order to avoid any interference. Okay, so once the repeater link 2 is getting a message from repeater link 1, it will transmit it to repeater of base station 1 and then the mobile unit. The mobile unit will transmit the message under the area of its coverage in frequency F1 only. Okay, so that is the basic idea of VHF and UHF mobile communication. Okay. So we'll be moving on to the final topic of this module, that is diversity reception or minimization of fading. This is just theory only. Diversity reception and minimization of fading. Fading in telecommunications, diversity scheme refers to a method for improving the reliability of a message signal by using 2 or more communication channels with different characteristics. Okay, fading, you already know what is fading is. You might have studied in digital communication and all. So in order to reduce that fading, at the time of reception, we are employing this diversity reception. This is just theory only. It's not that much important. I have not seen this thing asked too many times in university examinations. So we will just go through what is this. Okay, it is based on the fact that individual channels experience different levels of fading and interference. Multiple versions of the same signal may be transmitted or received and combined in the receiver. That is the idea. Okay, in order to avoid the fading, multiple versions of the same signals may be transmitted and received and combined in the receiver. That's how we can avoid the fading. Same signal is transmitting, but in multiple versions, and at the receiver, they are combined together. So the minimization of fading can happen, or fading will be less. There are 4 different types are there. First one is time diversity. Okay, our basic idea is to transmit multiple versions of same signal. So time diversity means what? Multiple versions of the same signal are transmitted at different times. Yes. Our idea is to transmit multiple versions of the same signal. So time diversity means multiple versions of the same signal will be transmitted at different time intervals. That's frequency diversity. The signal is transmitted using several frequency channels. Frequency diversity. There's multiple versions of the same signal are transmitted at different frequencies or frequency channels, or spread over a wide spectrum that is affected by frequency selective fading. Suppose if some particular frequencies are showing fading, more fading, then we will use another frequency. So by that we can avoid frequency selective fading. If we are using 2 or 3 different frequencies to transmit the signal, suppose if in 1 or 2 frequencies, even though the absorption is high or fading is high, we can adjust. We will get a better result in some other frequencies. Okay. Next is space diversity. The signal is transmitted over several different propagation paths. Space means path. So there are several different propagation paths. In case of wire transmission, this can be achieved by transmitting by multiple wires. Okay. In case of wireless transmission, it can be achieved by antenna diversity using multiple transmitter antennas and multiple receiving antennas. Okay. Space diversity is that only. We are transmitting to different paths. In wireless, we can use different wires. In wire transmission, we can use different wires. In wireless transmission, we can use different sets of receiving and transmitting antennas. Okay. Next is the polarization diversity. Nothing but the same thing. Only polarization is differs. Multiple versions of a signal are transmitted and received via antennas with different polarization. Okay. A diversity combining technique is applied on the receiver side. On the receiver side, the combining technique is applied. That is, the receiver should know at what time which polarization is coming. That's it. Multi-user diversity. It is obtained by opportunistic user scheming at either the transmission or the receiver. Opportunistic user scheduling is as follows. The transmitter selects the best user among candidate receiver according to the qualities of each channel between the transmitter and each receiver. Okay. If multiple users are present, that means the transmitter will select which user should be communicated at which time. Okay. So I think our 6th module is finished. Okay. So it's almost 9:30. We can stop here. So next class we will start with our